Welcome back into the Blogger Bowl Week 4 recap, Week 5 edition. Dan wants you to rank Kansas. I didn't put my my Rocky Top name on my name tag there, but big Vols guy. Phil forgot to wear his Vols gear. I guess he also didn't get the hat memo. I guess me and Dan are the only ones rocking hats today. Guys, that was a really fun weekend in college football, and I know it worked out well for our team, and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching college football this weekend. I thought it was a pretty darn good weekend.
Depending on how your own teams of rooting interest
is. That's a fair point.
Yeah, very insensitive of you, Matt.
Okay, I was going to get to there and say Dan's team lost a tough one with their backup quarterback on the road. I think they're still going to be fine. Like, I thought that was objectively a very exciting, fun game to watch. Dan doesn't look happy with me.
Objective.
I wasn't going to bring it up unless I was asked about it because nobody.
Of course, we're going to get to. We always get to our teams,
about
even though
Texas.
We're not.
But I will say this: this is from Rod Babers, who was an All-American DB in the early 2000s and now does radio in Austin. Texas is 7-9 under Steve Sarkisian. They held a halftime lead in 5 of those 9 losses. They held a fourth quarter lead in 5 of those 9 losses. They had a double-digit lead in 4 of those 9 losses. It was a very, very poorly coached game on their part. It's pretty evident at this point that they just put all of their eggs in the Alabama basket because all of the things they did well in that game, they are not doing now. They made no adjustments. They coached poorly. The team is poorly prepared. They have issues all over the field. And credit to Joey McGuire. Like, Joey McGuire understood the assignment. They're a big underdog at home. They're historical underdogs at Texas Tech. And this is a guy who's trying to come in and energize this program and this fan base. And he said, fuck it, I'm going for every fourth down that's fourth and manageable. And they did. And they got, I think, you have to go look at the box score, but I think they were like 1 million for 1,000,001 on fourth down conversions in this game. It was the low, according to Bill Connolly from ESPN, it was the lowest post-game win expectancy for any team that has won a game in college football this year. So that just goes to show you, and it was part of that, sure, like Hudson Card wasn't even bad. He didn't even play badly. Sure, the Texas offense would be different if Quinn Ewers were healthy, but it wasn't like Hudson Card was bad in this game. It was just simply a matter of there were just defensively, they just couldn't cover. For some reason, they were getting home and getting pressure on Donovan Smith and forcing him to make bad throws. And so they just decided to stop trying to blitz him and rush 3 or 4 guys and weren't getting there, leaving guys completely uncovered the whole game. Offensively, it was just kind of the same thing we've seen for the last year and now 4 games with them. When things start to go bad, they just don't execute on offense. Now Xavier Worthy's hurt. Nobody knows what his status is. They're running low on wide receivers. And then, of course, just the icing on the cake. They somehow managed to force overtime in this game, a game that they frankly didn't really deserve it after they let Tech go down the field and score with 24 seconds left. But then Hudson Card leads an incredible drive to get them into position. Bert Auburn, who if you haven't seen what Bert Auburn looks like, Google him and look at his hair.
Great name, too.
I'm just waiting for him to kick a game-winning field goal so that I can use the Auburn's going to win the football game line because he's kicked a field goal to force overtime against Tech and kicked a go-ahead field goal with it 2 minutes left against Alabama in both of Texas's losses. But they go to overtime, and it's okay, well, maybe they'll pull this out. Wasn't confident. And then of all people, Bijan Robinson, who I think has now fumbled 4 times in 500 career carries, is the one who fumbles the ball. And it just feels gutting for a guy who I feel absolutely terrible for, spending his college career playing behind a shitty offensive line for 3 years. And obviously he's going to make a lot of money at the next level, but just a brutal afternoon. And we can go ahead and we can launch into our first game if you want, because I will say I had to go back and kind of rewatch this one after the fact, because I will say and I should have gotten the guy's name, but I only saw him once. But shout out to the gentleman at the the FanDuel Sportsbook at Mohegan Sun Casino, who saw me and my buddy in Texas shirts and put the Texas Tech game on the big TV with audio.
Always nice when you have people go out of the way for you like that.
And he came up to us and he told us he was from Tyler, Texas, which is in East Texas, the home of Earl Campbell. And he's like, I saw the shirts. I put it on the big TV for you guys. Super appreciate it. But Tennessee 38, Florida 33, I believe, final score. They did it. For those of you who might have actually watched this in real time, what were your thoughts on it? I'll go last because, like I said, I kind of went back and rewatched it on Monday morning. We see the shirt there from Matt as his internet froze for a second. I thought he was really still, but no, his internet froze. So,
sorry.
Matt, you showed off the shirt.
No, I wish I was. My
what were your thoughts on Florida, Tennessee?
First off, from the Florida side, I was impressed with Anthony Richardson's bounce back effort because there was kind of back-to-back games of him looking like trash, and this was the Utah Anthony Richardson. He was damn near impossible to bring down in the pocket. When he was escaping the pocket, he was making these unbelievable throws. There were a couple times, one or two, that Tennessee probably should have come away with an interception or a batted down ball, sure. But there were a couple times where he was just impossible to bring down. And
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. This wasn't even the Utah. This was beyond that, at least as a pass.
Yes, he was a better thrower this game than he was during Utah.
The jumping off, talent jumping off the page was like the Utah game, but as a passer, unbelievable. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so exactly. He was a better runner in the Utah game. This game, you saw the throwing talent, and it seemed early on like kind of here we go again for Tennessee, and because you kind of expected, and this is why none of us wanted to touch that 10.5-point line. Florida tends to show up in this spot. And you did get that Florida team to show up. And I think that was, even though they lost, no moral victories in rivalry games, I think that was a big step in the right direction for Florida, because I think Tennessee's a pretty darn good football team. And they gave them all they could handle. And that offense was certainly playing well enough to win. On the other side, man, sticking with the quarterbacks, I can't say enough about Hendon Hooker. There were a lot of times where it just looked like Florida threw a lot of big punches, and Florida took advantage of a lot of momentum swings, and Hooker just kept making throw after throw. Then he'd scramble for a first down, make another big throw. Florida scores a touchdown to go up right before half, and then he throws the big deep ball down the sideline to give Tennessee the lead right back. Both quarterbacks in this game were absolutely fantastic. In years past, this was a middle of the road / bottom tier SEC matchup. This one felt like two very good SEC teams, probably not the top tier, but two very good SEC teams doing battle and worthy of the 2:30, 3:30 time slot, not just getting gifted it because of the rivalry. I love this game, but this was so much fun, and the atmosphere in Neyland was off the charts.
Yeah, this was just to follow up on what Matt said. We were really high on Hooker heading into the season based on his kind of end of the year stats last year, what he's going to be doing with his offense. And he's just continued to do it this year. And when you look at his kind of stats so far, I mean, he's put up, almost 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, and no picks so far. So he's not only putting up great numbers, but he's also being extremely efficient, which as he's going into the stretch of playing with the top tier SEC games, he's going to need that because, again, their defense is going to give up a ton of points to the Floridas or to the Georgias and Alabamas of the world. Yeah. So the only way that they're going to win those games if he continues to be extremely efficient. Just a takeaway from the game in general, as Matt said, Hooker fighting through an injury too. I think that was kind of a good thing because as he goes against the more elite defenses, like he's going to get hit more. And so to see him take some big hits, get slightly banged up, and then still perform in some big moments, just from a confidence perspective, going into these next tier of matchups for him is huge. Also, Brew McCoy coming along for him, I think, is another weapon in his arsenal. Yeah, I don't love him. It's transferred from USC. He transferred out of USC. He transferred back to USC. He transferred to Tennessee.
Do you know where he started? Do you know where he originally enrolled?
Texas.
Just since you asking Texas.
But he committed to USC or enrolled to USC for 5 minutes, then Texas, then USC. It's a weird saga.
I think he committed to USC. He signed and enrolled at Texas and then left for USC, then wavered about it for a while. Then there was the whole controversy this summer. There were people talking about how Lincoln Riley was holding him back and not letting him go. His career has been a mess, but yeah, I mean, he is definitely emerging as a playmaker. And I'll let you continue just without Cedric Tillman. Also, just his ability to step up in this game was pretty massive.
Yeah, and so it's the pieces are now forming around a Tennessee team when their offense is surging in the right direction. Very curious to see how their defense holds up against the upper echelon of the SEC. I don't think it's going to be very well, but what I think we'll see is there's probably going to be some weird games, but it's going to be, hopefully their offense can compete enough where it's going to be some shootouts, which should be some high-scoring, fun games. At the bare minimum. So again, Tennessee has now separated themselves into the top third of the SEC. I think they've established that now where they're in the true competitor where it's hey, they could have a big upset win versus one of the top teams, should, round out the year pretty well. But it's good to see Tennessee kind of in a much better place than they were in the past few years. Then one just small note that my wife's takeaway from the game, as we were watching it, because her family, her brother went to Florida, big Gators family there. I don't know if you guys have seen Desmond Watson, the
415-pound
6'5",
lineman?
Big boy.
415-pound D tackle. The ESPN did him a bit of an injustice, but an absolute justice for my wife, where they had a shot of Hooker running down the field and Watson chasing after him. Man, he's got the biggest booty in college football. But it is just, again, anytime he needs to somehow get a fullback dive. That's just my takeaway from that, because him in the end zone is just something that I need in my life.
I have actually that'll bring me back. Remind me of putting linemen on the offensive side of the ball when we get to the USC game. For me, I think the thing that kind of stands out to me, kind of looking back at this, the way I would describe this game is a 12-round heavyweight boxing fight between a great puncher and a great boxer. Florida, surprisingly, was the team that was throwing the big haymakers, excuse me. Yeah. They were throwing the haymakers, and they were trying to land the big, decisive blow every chance they could get. And I mean, Anthony Richardson had 453 passing yards. Tennessee was just steady Eddie throughout the game. Hendon Hooker had his lowest average depth of target of the season so far, but 50.5% of their plays were successful plays. So they were able just to steadily move the ball throughout the game. Another thing that you'll hear a lot of the analytics kind of community talk about a lot is the middle eight, which is the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, and how that can swing a game. Bill Belichick is a big proponent of like that being a focus of what they do with the Patriots. And that turned the game here. Tennessee was down by 4. They score a touchdown. The deep diving catch by Ramel Keaton on the sideline, maybe the most impactful play of the weekend, that unbelievable catch on the sidelines. They drive down and score. They come out of halftime. They score again. Suddenly they were down they were down 3. I think now they're up by 11, and Florida never had another possession with a chance to take the lead until they got the onside kick at the end of the game. So credit to Tennessee. Their defense has very likely no shot of stopping Alabama, but if they can protect Hendon Hooker, that game's going to be a shootout. It's going to be at home. And when we've seen Alabama lose regular season games, it comes down to little things on the margin. And if, like I said this a couple weeks ago, if they're ever going to do it, it's got to be now. I mean, they're just like the fact that Josh Heupel has turned that program around the way that he did. I just had a program like I'm still in the South, by the way.
He did. That was
program around and has brought just hope back to a program that felt kind of hopeless for a long time is pretty remarkable. And we said if they were going to have to get the statement win, and they did. You guys were absolutely right. It's a rivalry game. Weird things happen, and Florida gave it their best shot. And again, come out of that so impressed with Anthony Richardson. But at the end of the day, Tennessee gets the win and moves on. The other big SEC game of the day in Jerry World, I told you, Matt, that this rivalry is a weird one. And this was a weird game because it's almost always a weird game when the Hogs and the Aggies get together in the I'd rather be playing Texas Bowl. 23-21 final score after Arkansas's game-winning field goal doinks off the top of the upright, which apparently has already happened once in another game this year, which is just so weird that has happened now twice in college football.
Only in college football.
The one thing that I would say is I'm not sure that a non-injury play in the first half of a game has turned a game around more this year than that Arkansas fumble on the goal line that A&M returned for a touchdown. It took Arkansas almost 2 full quarters to really get back in that game. Man, that Arkansas defense is not good. We talked about it. They made the A&M offense look fairly competent in that game. It's a big win for Texas A&M, although it does come at a cost, as Aniyah Smith, one of their 2 really special offensive talents, suffered a leg injury and is going to be out for the rest of the season as they get ready to play Mississippi State on Saturday. Phil, what were your thoughts on what happened in Jerry World on Saturday?
I was about to say, this game before that fumble looked like it was looked like Arkansas was just gonna, and
Arkansas was about to roll.
Yeah, 14 up 14 nothing quick. And in my mind, this game was headed towards being a 35-14, 35-17 type game where maybe Max Johnson throws a touchdown late. But I mean, my biggest takeaway is I still don't think Texas A&M is very good. Arkansas has to be very disappointed in this experience and in this game, because it was absolutely a winnable game that very much should have come away with. Thank them. At least they covered, though. Shout out them covering. But I thought that Arkansas was going to be doing a little bit more. I thought KJ Jefferson would honestly throw it a bit more. I think he only threw like 19 passes. Wasn't overly impressive.
12 and 19 for 171.
Yeah, again, just put up pedestrian numbers. And granted, the Texas A&M defense is good. But my biggest takeaway coming from this game is that Texas A&M is just not a threat in the SEC. And it just kind of stamped that, where I think Arkansas played a bad game in which they lost a game that they very much could have won and probably should have won. Again, I read something where there's in NFL stadiums, because there's something in a dome, there's flags at the top of it. So because it hit the top, there's a screw poking out the top of the thing. So it actually deflected because it hit a certain angle at the top. I think that was a deep, dark conspiracy from the dark web. But
by the dark, is that just Arkansas fans on Twitter complaining?
Yeah, is that on Hogville? Are you spending your Saturday nights trolling on Hogville? Is that where
I went into a deep? I go into some deep dives sometimes.
Bill's
I don't know
deep on Razorbacks Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know how I ended up there, but again, my biggest takeaway is Arkansas's defense is not good enough, and their offense is not good enough to be in that top third of the SEC. And Texas A&M's offense is also not good enough to really, I think, be competitive versus the top tier of the SEC for the rest of the year. And they're also, again, losing Anaya Smith. That is a absolute killer for them. If they were going to be competitive, it would be him having some game-breaking, massive, long plays, and losing him is a dagger to them in an already pedestrian offense. So again, in a game that I was hoping to see a lot more from Arkansas to see if they were going to take that Tennessee jump, they didn't. And in a game that Texas A&M is kind of who we think they are. Better with Max Johnson, but still nothing to write home about.
Yeah, it was like the opposite of the Tennessee-Florida game, whereas like Arkansas was like Tennessee got over that hump. Like Arkansas was kind of looking to get over that hump, but really just one play kind of derailed them, whereas Tennessee was able to kind of withstand those big blows and keep coming back. Like Arkansas, after that, the fumble touchdown return was just kind of deer in the headlights, didn't really do much the rest of the game. And it seemed like it was either KJ Jefferson making a big play or nobody else was really going to step up. And that to me, and against that A&M defense, you need more than just your quarterback. But yeah, A&M's offense still kind of brutal. This Arkansas defense isn't very good. A&M puts up 16 points offensively against them in a rivalry game. It's just they're not going to do anything of substance. They're able to have a little bit of success running the football, but you got to be able to move the ball through and they're going to be able to do against, when they come up against Alabama or in the SEC. So, it's a game Arkansas really should have won. And if you're an A&M fan and you won, you're feeling happy, but still, you did learn a lot about your team. It's that you're still just not very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think this will be one in a series of moments where I want to say that bad defenses can make good offenses. Bad defenses can make bad offenses look good. And this was a case where the A&M offense looked competent at times because the Arkansas defense, I said it on the show on Thursday, they're a bad tackling and bad coverage team. And that was the case. They had a 1st and 30 and they gave up 32 yards on it. It's just like late in the game when they need to get off the field and get the ball back. Like that was just kind of what was going on there in that game. Speaking of bad defenses making bad offenses look good, the Clemson Tigers offense goes down to Wake Forest, and absolutely they should have lost this game, but because Dabo Swinney has a lucky horseshoe up his ass, they win 51-45 in overtime, or in double overtime, and I was this close to pulling off the miracle cover in a miracle 7-point cover in double overtime if Clemson had been able to get the 2-point conversion there. Phil, you started. I've got some thoughts. Phil, you start us off.
Yeah, I mean, again, just with the bad defense of Wake Forest, the one thing which you can hang your hat on if you're a Clemson fan is DJ made some big throws, which, again, he was still, if you look at his stats, 5 touchdowns, not a great completion percentage, still had some pretty just not great throws. But he also shows why he was such a highly rated recruit coming out in some of those glimpses where it's got to be just so frustrating if you're a Clemson fan. There was the one touchdown that I think he had 2 guys hanging on his leg, and he was just kind of drifting. He just kind of flicks it, a perfect ball in the back of the end zone. Was just ridiculous. And if you're a Wake Forest fan, you're kicking yourself thinking you absolutely should have won this game. I mean, if you'd have gone in and say, hey, we're going to, put up whatever, how many regulation
45.
points? 45.
Or I guess whatever. No, it wasn't regular. It was 30, 38, something like that.
38 regulation points against Clemson. Like, we can probably win this game. And they didn't, right? They just played pretty poorly on defense. They made a bad offense, like you mentioned, look good. Clemson fans are probably thinking DJ is going to be great. I don't think they're going to. It's just doesn't this Clemson team feel like they're going to win like 4 more games like this, where it's just like by the skin of their teeth, and everyone's like, are they good? Are they not good? Because again, I think the biggest games they have NC State coming up. They have
this week.
They'll probably play Florida State. They play Florida State. They play Notre Dame.
They play NC State. Here's the rest of their schedule. They play NC State at home on Saturday. They go to Boston College on the 8th of October. They go to Florida State on the 15th. They get Syracuse at home, which is suddenly looking a little bit sketchier. They play Notre Dame on the road. They get Louisville at home. They have Miami at home. That game suddenly looking a lot less daunting. I think you can probably flip Florida State and Miami in terms of the expectation of what those games are going to be. And then they, of course, end the season with South Carolina. So some interesting spots. I mean, that stretch of
there's not many easy games left for them.
Right.
I'll put it this way. If they are a top tier SEC team, this is a cakewalk the rest of the way. But because it's Clemson, they're going to have difficult matchups. I don't know if they can make it out of Tallahassee if that's a night game. Notre Dame, it's a tough matchup for Notre Dame. I have to say that. Miami absolutely stinks. But again, this Clemson team could potentially limp their way to a undefeated season and make it into the playoffs, and then just get absolutely mollywopped.
Mollywop, that's a great word.
But yeah, my biggest takeaway is Sam Hartman is fun when he is playing well. I like, Wake's receivers. What was interesting about this game, it's I think Wake had better top tier receiver talent than Clemson does, and better offensive talent than Clemson was. And if you would have said that statement 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been ridiculous. So that's definitely an interesting aspect of it. But again, just a game where a team absolutely should have been able to pull off a victory and didn't. Feel for the Wake fans, and if you're Clemson fans, you're kind of like, who are we? I guess we should have. If they were that elite of a defense, I don't think they should have given up that many points and that many big plays to Wake Forest, who's a very good. It was a good team, good offense, but by no means elite upper echelon.
I think we learned Clemson has an elite defensive line and a very, very good front seven. But if they have an off day, that secondary is very, very open to getting picked apart like Sam Hartman did. Grant, it was a very good one of the better quarterbacks in college football, a very, very good receiving core that did it to them. But, man, they got exposed. I am very interested. This NC State game is a very interesting one for me. They have them at home, right? It's home against NC State.
Yeah, it's at Clemson. We don't going to be there.
We don't know how good NC State is, but this is a big spot for that defense after – they got to win, but kind of having to come up big and reaffirm themselves as a very good defense in college football. I think you're going to see the defensive line need to come out and have a very, very good football game. And can the offense build on, take advantage of very big defense? Was that DJ playing really, really well? Was it a little bit of both? Clemson needs to, for a big win, they have a whole lot of questions to answer. And if you're a Wake fan, you're kicking yourself for losing that one, because that one was in the bag and you kind of had that one sewn up.
Yeah, so we talked about the talent edge that Clemson had on Thursday, and I actually might disagree a little bit. I'm downgrading the Clemson defensive line a little bit, because they weren't good. They weren't great. They just could not get pressure at all until they really needed to in overtime late in that game. They really, really struggled to get pressure on Sam Hartman, which wasn't the case in previous years against this team. And you saw the youth or inexperience or whatever you want to credit it to. These Clemson secondary is very, very sketchy. Nate Wiggins, a sophomore cornerback. I'm watching 10 games at once because I'm at the casino, I'm at the sports book, and even watching it, that game wasn't on. For some reason, we had Baylor, Iowa State on the audio TV, the big TV. So I'm watching this game without audio on, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh boy, number 20's having himself a poor afternoon. I just felt bad for him. They keep putting him out on an island, and he's just getting burned time after time after time, and they just couldn't get off the field at all on defense. It was a really bad Really bad performance from them. And I will give DJU credit for how well he played and some of the throws that he made. I just continue to be underwhelmed by what they do on offense. They know that they have the talent edge, and on offense is where the talent edge really showed for Clemson, because there was no scheme. They don't scheme. That's my biggest frustration with them. It's our guys are better than yours. We're just going to throw it up and they're going to go make plays. And you go look at some of DJ's best, like some of their big plays. So one route, DJ just throwing the ball up, and a guy who's better than the 3-star, 2-star, kid who runs a 4.6 40, who's like 6 inches shorter than the wide receiver, just going up and getting it. So I'll save all of my thoughts, I guess, for the NC State game on Thursday. If I'm here on Thursday, Phil doesn't know that I might not be here on Thursday, but I'm just not optimistic that NC State's going to put forth the game plan. I don't know that Dave Dorn is the kind of coach that's going to be able to put together the kind of game plan to beat them on the road, and particularly if the weather. That's going to be one of those, and we'll talk about the hurricane
weird weather games
later. That's going to be potentially one of the weird weather situations this weekend. We'll talk about that later. The next big game, you can see it on my name card here. Rank Kansas, you cowards. The mighty Jayhawks moved to 4-0 in the game of the day. I will lay out and let you guys go first. I will say, however, as much as I love this Kansas team and am all in on this Jayhawks team, I think I might have come out of this game more impressed, or not more impressed, but very impressed with Duke.
Yeah, I Elko has done a very good job in a very short period of time. And it's not like they're coming off of really bad stretches of coaches. I think they had Cutcliffe for a while, who's a good coach.
Fine.
Just a kind of solid, steady coach there. But I was, again, impressed with Duke. I continue to be impressed with Jalen Daniels. It's hard not to at this point. It's just weird seeing dynamic talent of that at Kansas. But I'm with you. How do you not rank Kansas right now? At least put them 25, 24. Again, with them, with JMU, kind of how do you not have them ranked right now? It's just absolute catastrophe. But I know Matt has been high on Kansas this whole year. Matt,
yeah, big Kansas guy.
You're just doing this to piss me off now, and I get it.
Not fully, but I said Kansas was my most interesting storyline in the Big 12.
That's what it was. He said most interesting story.
I was the one that bet it.
You did. I also went out on a limb and said the over under 2.5 win Kansas team was my most interesting story of the Big 12. We're both right, Dan. We can both be right. That's okay.
Yeah, 4-0 is nuts. Kansas.
So I am looking at others receiving votes here in the top 25. That's why it looked like I might not have been watching you guys. Kansas is 26th and 27th in a lot of these.
So I don't care about the
right there.
They're 27th though, or no, they were 27th. Never mind. I think they were 27th.
They're 27th in the coaches poll, 26th in the AP.
And Syracuse is good. I would take Kansas on a neutral field against Syracuse.
I think I would too. I might take Kansas on a neutral field over Texas A&M. It's a little bit of an exaggeration there. I love Jalen Daniels. He's so much fun to watch. He is. I don't want to compare him too much to Anthony Richardson, but just kind of reminds me of that with the dual threat through the air, on the ground, and Dan, I think you were tweeting about it. How what's it going to take for Jalen Daniels to be in New York for the Heisman? If he keeps playing like this, he's going to get votes. And I think there's a pretty decent chance that he gets there if Kansas can somehow run. They're not going to run the table. They're not going to be an undefeated team through the Big 12. But if they're 9-3 and he keeps having game after game like this, why not? Why not have him there? Why not vote for him?
The thing is, Matt, he's gonna have the opportunity to. I mean, he's going to be playing in big games. He has a 3-week stretch against Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Texas, Kansas State. That is a buzzsaw. But if he comes out of that, and people still have he's still putting up pretty good numbers, and we'll see how those games go for, your Jayhawks over there, guys. But just want to say, he'll have the opportunity to.
Let's just get to a bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is, okay, so just to want to, back to what I was saying earlier, I mean, Duke playing a good team. Kansas is a good team, deserved to be ranked in the top 25.
I was impressed with Duke.
And
I
Duke
thought Kansas
hung around and took everything that Kansas gave them and gave it right back. Elko's done a really good job already, though my big pet peeve with hiring a defensive-minded coach to be a first-time head coach. They had the ball inside the 5. They had a 4th down inside the Kansas 5 early in the game, and he kicked a field goal. Like, you're not going to beat Kansas with field goals. Don't do that. But they hung around. Riley Leonard, very, very good quarterback. Dukes just seems to kind of find ways, and it was under Cutcliffe that made sense. Maybe less so now, but Riley Leonard looks like a good quarterback. But yeah, Jalen Daniels, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. I asked the question. So Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy at 9-3. Even since then, the sport has changed so much. So where it's just hard for me to imagine a quarterback who is the Heisman Trophy winner not being a quarterback on a good team, just because now Alabama and Ohio State and even Georgia to a lesser degree are going to be turning out quarterbacks that put up huge yardage. But this Kansas team, their defense isn't good enough for them to win enough for Jalen Daniels to get noticed for the to win, obviously. I think at 8-4, he could conceivably get an invite. Particularly if CJ Stroud just has a nuclear year and it looks like CJ Stroud's going to just get every first place vote. You might see all of the other finalists just be like, you had a great year. Here's an invite, whether it's a Stetson Bennett, whether it's Bryce Young, whether it's Jalen Daniels. Beating Baylor, beating Oklahoma State, beating Oklahoma seems fairly unlikely. Look, you can make all the jokes you want. If Quinn Ewers is healthy when they play, they probably shouldn't beat Texas, but they might. Everything else is in play in that league. They can beat TCU. They can beat Texas Tech. They can beat they already beat West Virginia. So this is a team that they can beat Iowa State on Saturday, which we'll talk about that line coming up. So it's just been a magical year, and I hope that nobody notices how good of a job Lance Leipold is doing, and he stays there for a few more years. The last of our big games, and I think Phil was the one who put this on the radar, was Wisconsin and Ohio State. I asked if what happened to Ohio State in week 1 against Notre Dame was week 1 weirdness, and I think the answer to that question is a definitive yes. Ohio State, 93rd percentile in EPA per play, 94th percentile in success rate, 85th percentile in yards per play against one of the best defenses in college football. CJ Stroud made it look easy. Both running backs had over 100 rushing yards. The defense was good. I mean, Braylon Allen had a huge run late against the backups. And they're doing all of this without Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I'm going to throw this out there as a question right now. Is this I'm gonna hot take your face off, boys. Is this the best team in college football? Because I don't think that Georgia can match them offensively at their best. And if Ohio State's defense continues to improve over the course of the season and is just merely very good, I don't think Georgia can match their level on offense. And I think Alabama might be able to. But even though we've seen some improvement and we saw some improvement from some of the skill position guys from Alabama, it was just Vanderbilt will get a little bit better test this week, although maybe not because Arkansas's defense sucks. I just think that right now Ohio State's offense is on its complete own plane of existence. And if that defense is consistently good to very good, I think that their ceiling at least might be of the best team in the country.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I still have Georgia 1 right now, just because I want to see this offense against Georgia's front 7 and secondary. Like, I think that will be, for me, that is like the dream national championship matchup right now that I want to see. I think that would just be an incredible game. But I think the one thing to consider is like Jim Knowles deserves to be the coach of the year this year right now, or the assistant coach of the year.
Coordinator of the year, whatever.
Yeah, whatever that is, with the Broyles Award or something.
I think so.
Yep, Broyles Award.
He turned a defense that was like decidedly soft last year. Like, that was the word to describe them, like soft. And when they got punched in the mouth, they like cried a little bit. And so he's really turned that defense, which again, it's like a painter going in to, a studio with like the best paints to work with in the history. They're like, he had all the raw talent. It was just putting it all together. And so watching that defense go from a soft defense to a hard-nosed defense, where I think they needed that Notre Dame game right away. Like, that couldn't have been a better game for that defense to have like a gutted out defense. Same with their offense, because they showed that they could win a game like that. And they have not looked back since. And honestly, and even they had one drive versus Notre Dame in which Mayan Williams was just like, hey, team, my back, I'm going to throw you on that and just run right down the field. And so the combination of Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, it's like they have the absurd. So they have like the elite offensive rushing talent, and then also just the Heisman front runner without Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Without a guy who might be positional importance independent, might be one of the 10 best players in college football.
Yeah, so it's like, that they're going to they haven't peaked yet. And I just can't wait to see them beat Michigan by 13,000 points.
Yeah, after watching both of those two teams this weekend, I
very
think,
different. Very different.
They're two very different football teams. Michigan still has a chance to grow, but man, they got a long way to go to get on Ohio State's level. I think that Notre Dame game was important for them in learning that they can win without Jackson Smith and Jigba. They can win in different ways. They kind of got that. Even though Notre Dame obviously didn't end up being the team we thought they were in week one, it kind of shook the moniker of they can't win those tight, tough games. And boy, when that offense is going, they're just impossible to stop. I'm not ready to say they're on top of Georgia yet, but like they're right there and kind of knocking on that door. Just they seem like they're able to win in different ways. They're not just a team that has to beat you 52-35. Like they can go out and punish you on the ground. They can go out and punish you defensively. And then, oh yeah, we're great. We have the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, our top 5, top 10 NFL draft pick receivers at playing, but we still got 3 really good ones behind him. And at this pace, when Smith and Jigba comes back, and they're going to take all the time in the world with him because they don't need to bring him back anytime soon. When he comes back, I would love to see the Georgia defense going up against that Ohio State offense. I'm not really sure who wins that one, but I'm not going to bet against Ohio State at this point. But I'm still probably the Ohio State offense. I'm not ready to put them over Georgia just yet, but they're knocking on that door.
Yeah. And shout out Marvin Harrison Jr. for wearing Louis Vuitton cleats and an Apple Watch during the game.
How is wearing an Apple Watch legal? Isn't that against some sort of rule?
You're not stealing signals like you are in baseball, so I guess
fair point. Fine. Also, why would you want that? Like, what if it's a helmet? Then you broke your Apple Watch.
There's a lot of jokes that I'm not going to make because there's a possibility his father is listening and you don't want to get on his father's bad side. So we're going to move on. I have my stray thoughts section. I will bring up some games and some things I thought and see if you guys watched any of this.
1 out of 5.
I brought up the last week. I talked myself out of the because it's college football parlay. Ironically enough, the only one of the legs that won outright was the one that I said I was just going to take the spread. We talked about Arkansas already. Kansas State, for whatever reason, the purple boogeyman went into Norman and got the Sooners again. But obviously the game that I wanted to talk about because I was one of 5 people in America that was able to get the Pac-12 network. Thank you, Longhorn Network, for not being on any actual cable package and forcing me to buy Sling TV for a month so that I could watch this game. USC lucky to survive. Caleb Williams was terrible. 16 of 36, 180 yards and a touchdown, although the touchdown was to Jordan Addison to win the game late. Sorry to bring up bad memories, but they got the second version 2.0 of the Bush push on a 4th down. Caleb Williams got stood up on 4th and 1. The offensive line came in and pushed him to the first down, and they were able to go on and win the game. Oregon State was able to pressure them consistently in that game. So the offensive line, a bit of a work in progress. USC is 89th in success rate allowed and 102nd against the run, which when you go to Salt Lake City in a few weeks, you might need to shore that up. But here's this, and this is from Bill Connolly. They have defensed, which means intercepted or broken up. They have defensed 24 passes this year, while opponents have defensed 11 of theirs. Based on national averages, this would typically result in about 5 interceptions for USC and 2.3 for opponents. The actual tally, USC's defense has 11 interceptions, and Caleb Williams hasn't thrown one yet. So they're giving up a lot of yards. They're allowing teams to move the ball, but they're getting off the field thanks to turnovers. They are basically the West Coast version of the 2021 Iowa defense. So their reckoning is coming if they don't shore some things up. And I really still think that Utah game in a few weeks is going to be a bit of a problem.
I could not agree more. And my biggest takeaway from this, not being able to watch it, but going through the box score. So they won by 3 points, right? Mm-hmm. They had a +4 turnover margin. Mm-hmm. How can you win by 3 points with this offense while having a +4 turnover margin? There has to be, I'm curious a statistic, like it's got to be like a less than 1.0001% teams who have won with a, Oregon State almost pulled this off with a, -4 turnover margin. That is ridiculous. And so how does USC get 4 interceptions and end up with 17 with it? Yeah. And end up with 17 points. That is a statistical that is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's very weird. Chance Nolan just was not that guy, and he's played well at times this year. He just wasn't that guy. So my question is to bring up the Bush push 2.0 again, and sorry to be that asshole. why don't teams just I know obviously if you do this, teams are going to know what you're going to run, but why don't you just teach your quarterback how to take a snap under center, and on anything that's 4th and like 2 or shorter, put the quarterback under center and put your 2 biggest linemen in the backfield and just have them push the quarterback across the line for a first down. You
Because
can't pull them.
It's legal
You
now,
can't
right?
pull them, but you can push them. Pushing is legal, pulling is not. So I don't understand why teams don't do
I
that.
feel like you'd end up with a pretty bad back injury. I'm just picturing.
I mean, your quarterback might get hurt,
I'm
but
picturing the left tackle from the remember left tackle last year from the 49ers, who they sent him in motion just to absolutely destroy defensive ends.
Oh yeah,
I'm just-
Trent Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just picturing an offensive tackle in a 3-point stance just ramming the back of a quarterback and just snapping his back. But
line up your swing tackle, your backup tackle at right tight end, motion him over into like an I formation right next to the quarterback, and then boom.
Wishbone fullbacks.
So my other thought, because it brings me back to the Arkansas game, if a coach was smart, KJ Jefferson would have an automatic green light that if Arkansas is across midfield and they have a 3rd down play that gets them to 4th and 2 or shorter, to have an automatic green light for the Arkansas offense to just run a quarterback draw, keeper power, whatever you want to say, and just let him at 240 pounds bully his way to a first down. The next game on the list, I don't know if you guys saw this. I went back and watched it, but how about the James Madison Dukes? Thank fucking God somebody else has to listen to 28-3 jokes for the rest of their life. App State. This was also at the same time as the Texas game, so I didn't get to watch it.
Did not see a ton of this one
in depth. All I know is I looked up, they were down 28-3. I looked up, it was like 28-10, 28-17. It's like suddenly they're coming back, and then they come back. They win this game. This was another one that I went back and watched, and this wasn't a fluke. This was not something weird or whatever. They were down 7-3, and they went fumble, turnover on downs, fumble, and App State scored on all 3 of those possessions, and that's how they went down. Other than that stretch of the game, they actually dominated this game. Their post-game win expectancy was 78%. They did not allow App State to do anything on offense in this game when they weren't giving them short fields. Once again, Kurt Cignetti has done a great job. This was a program that I talked about, has a lot of the positive aspects that you need. And in fact, I think their budget might be bigger than some of the teams in the Sun Belt already. A very good defense, a very good roster. Louisiana, I didn't even put this on my list, but the Louisiana Lafayette lost their 2nd game in a row. They lost to Rice 2 weeks ago. They lost to Louisiana Monroe this week, and they were the favorites in the West. They've already beat App State. James Madison has. They legitimately might be the best team in this conference, but they can't win it because they're in their transition year.
Also,
I hate that rule.
You absolutely need to rank James Madison out of this. So in their 3 games this year, they beat Norfolk State 63-7, Appalachian State 38-28. Also beat a little team, Middle Tennessee State 44-7, who, if people remember, mollywopped, second time using that, the Miami Hurricanes this weekend. So like,
is that impressive?
They have 2. I mean, they have 2 very quality wins. I think. I mean, they received a couple votes, but again, I think the gold and the purple absolutely pop. I love seeing the FCS.
I love their uniforms.
I love the FCS transition to FBS and seeing them succeed. Again, Holy Cross Crusaders won 35-10. I know you guys knew that. Had to slip it in.
Of course.
Hey, Harvard this weekend. You can always tell a Harvard man. You can't tell them much. Don't forget that. Anyway, just wanted to mention that JMU. I love seeing JMU's success. They can. Can they be in a bowl game? I know they can't win their conference championship.
I would think so.
I would think they should be able to win a bowl game. But I think this is what people don't understand between FCS and FBS. The upper echelon of the FCS is a middle of the road to high tier MAC style team and also it's really, really good football. So I love that teams like this are hopefully opening more people's eyes to the beautiful world of FCS football.
They are bowl ineligible this year, unfortunately.
Boo.
If they go undefeated, they better claim a national championship.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah. And shout out to Connor and the folks at Homefield. If that happens, they should print Homefield has James Madison shirts. They should get they
have Louisville. They have Georgia State and Coastal. Not crazy to think that they could win out.
We'll see what happens in that Louisville game. The Louisville game is going to be interesting. Kind of depends on where the Louisville program is at that point in the season. I'm asking because this was another 3:30 game that I just looked up. Every time I looked up, the score was bigger and bigger and bigger. Minnesota just absolutely kicking the shit out of Michigan State. I put a poll on the BetsBirds Twitter, Michigan State, Minnesota good, Michigan State bad, or both, because I think it's probably a little bit of both. The only thing that I'll say, the only thing that I can say is Tanner Morgan, 23 of 26 for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's not going to be that efficient every week, but with Mo Ibrahim and the ability that team has to run the ball and play defense, if Tanner Morgan is at all good, this is a team that could win 10 or 11 games. I don't think that they have the firepower to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Do feel a little bit better every week about the plus 500 Minnesota to win the West bet that I gave out on the Big Ten preview and then tried to hedge out of because I was like, oh, their schedule's tough. Doesn't look so tough. They look like top to bottom the best team in that division. Yeah.
Did we learn more about Minnesota, where they are, or where Michigan State might have fallen to this year? Because that program looks like they're in some trouble. I mean, Mel Tucker is a secondary coach. He's a cornerbacks coach, and that secondary just got torched. Granted, they had to really respect the run, but they got torched by Tanner Morgan, who's a guy that we're not really sure how good he is yet. Like you said, Dan, if he's able to be efficient like that, with that running game, Minnesota is going to be in just about any game that they play. And it was we were looking to see in their first possible test how they looked on a tough road game, or what we thought might be a tough road game, Michigan State, and they just came in there and absolutely kicked the shit out of Michigan State. Now, Michigan State is in a bad spot, and they need to fix some things in a hurry, and they're probably not going to do it this year, but hats off to Minnesota. And I mean, hopefully Aiden O'Connell's healthy this week, and we actually think that's a little bit more of a tougher test for them, maybe, but I think we'll learn more about them from this week if Aiden O'Connell's healthy. But if not, man, they're probably looking at being undefeated going into the Penn State game, which is, I believe, Penn State's whiteout, right?
Yes, it is going to be the Penn State whiteout game. Keep in mind, with this Minnesota team, they have not beaten Iowa since 2014, and they've only won – it's the Little Brown Jug, right, with Minnesota?
Yeah.
With Wisconsin.
Bucket?
No, the Old Oaken Bucket is –
the Little Brown Jug, I think, is Wisconsin.
It's the axe.
Yeah, Minnesota, Wisconsin.
What am I doing? It's the axe.
Who's the jug?
They've only won Paul Bunyan's axe twice since 2003, so still a lot for that program to overcome. Hopefully they can and keep rowing the boat. The last thing I just wanted to mention is God bless anybody who bet Washington State and took the 6.5 on Saturday. That was the all-time, I think, would have been the all-time worst beat I think I've ever seen in college football until our guy Cam Ward makes the unbelievable throw that they were almost not able to he was dead. The receiver was down on the 1 yard line and they had just enough time to score the touchdown to secure the cover. But man, if you don't love college football, at 6.5 point underdog was up by 14 or 18 points and almost didn't cover. I don't know what to tell you.
Matt texted me saying what happened to Washington State. And I was out eating or something. I was like, what? They're up by 18. And also,
they lost.
It's like they lost. I was like, it's one of those games where you're just like, what? So I had to go back and watch the highlights because I watched some of them. Washington State looks good. Oregon's
it's weird that leaving that game that I feel better about Washington State than I do about Oregon.
Yeah.
But I guess Oregon did what good teams do that are going to challenge for a conference. They found a way to win a football game that they didn't play well in. They won their clunker. They did not play well. Bo Nix looked okay, but he made a couple bad throws. The numbers looked okay for Bo Nix.
Come on. You guys have done nothing but shit on Bo Nix all season, and he threw the pick six was awful. But
other than the pick six, Bo Nix played well.
3 touchdowns. Put that team on his back.
Other than the pick six, Bo Nix played very well.
And Bo Nix, just because you guys are such haters. I don't think Bo Nix is that good either. I'm just being a smartass.
I also have an apology to Adrian Martinez.
Yes.
So again, I bet Adrian Martinez, my prize pick of the week was to him to throw a late game breaking pick, which he had an opportunity to, and he didn't. Instead, he just had one of the most incredible, not even one of the more incredible runs that I've ever seen to win that game. So shout out Kansas State. Again, Oklahoma just cannot get Kansas State off their back, which I think is hysterical. You have a complete regime change and the outcome doesn't change. That's why college football is just different.
Yeah, it turns out while that defense is taking positive steps in the right direction, they still got some of the Lincoln Riley stink on them. Washington State, I'm interested to see them this week because they have a bounce back spot here. They're only given 3.5 at home against Cal. And if they don't have a letdown game against Oregon, I don't know if I'm missing something. If they come out and play and it's not a letdown spot, I think they're going to beat Cal by a lot. I don't think Cal's a very good football team.
That was weird. They scored 1 million points against Arizona. Shout out to Arizona, by the way. Someone pointed this out on Twitter. I think it was Alex Kirshner from Split Zone Duo. He's like, look, they're not good, but their games all of their games have been interesting so far. And if you're not going to be good, be interesting, be fun. Like being bad and sad is like the worst thing in the world.
Arizona's bad, but they're competent.
Yeah,
they're not incompetently bad.
Yeah, just housekeeping. Washington State scored a touchdown with 6:42 left in the game to go up by 12. And
so
almost
34-22, I think it was.
Yeah, 34-22, and almost did not cover. Before we get to the lines for this upcoming week, I do want to show a quick graphic if I can figure out what I'm trying to do. There we go. Obviously, you've probably heard about Hurricane Ian. That is expected to make landfall at some point either today or tomorrow. There are a lot of games that are potentially going to be affected if you just look at the path. So look in these areas in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Eastern Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then maybe even into Virginia. So you see some of the games there that might potentially be affected, and not just with the weather on Saturday, but for preparation. As of this moment, the South Carolina State-South Carolina game has been moved from Saturday to Thursday. The where is the game I'm looking for? ECU, East Carolina and South Florida, has been moved to Boca Raton and will be played on Saturday. So for the first time in their program's existence, the University of South Florida will actually play a home game in South Florida because Tampa is not in South Florida. And then, God, man, I don't know what you would have to pay me to watch Eastern Washington play Florida on a Saturday, but that game's been moved to Sunday at noon, and you can bet that the Red Zone will be on the big TV. My typical illegal stream of the Falcons will be on my laptop, but my tablet will have the SEC network up watching that Eastern Washington, Florida game. So just if you're looking to make a bet on any of these games, Matt and I have talked at length. If you watch Brown Bag Bets Day, Matt and Noops talked about it. The total in the North Carolina game opened, I think, 57, got bet all the way down to 49 at one point, and it's now back up to 51.5. So a lot of this stuff has already been kind of bet around at all of the sports books. So don't make any assumptions about what the lines are going to look like or what's going to happen, or think that you're going to have an edge on anyone in the market. My instinct is to kind of actually be contrarian here and just play some overs and hope that and expect that maybe that's not going to be that windy and rainy in Chapel Hill, and that Virginia Tech sucks and North Carolina can't play defense, and that there are going to be some points.
Yeah, I think I like the over in that one because, like we said, it's opened at 53.5, dropped down to 49.5. Now it's at 51, which still, down 2 points, and it's only been 2 days. The one game in there I'm really hoping doesn't get affected by the weather is Wake Forest at Florida State. Mm-hmm. I think that one has the potential to be a whole lot of fun. I think we now know we have two pretty good quarterbacks, two teams that they're not top tier teams, but they're very worthy of being ranked. And this game will go a long way in those ACC standings. Like, I just hope this isn't a weird weather game. I want to see those two quarterbacks go at it, and I want to see Sam Hartman in a tough spot on the road. That one to me is, God, I hope that's not affected by the weather, because that could be a really, really fun football game.
All right, so we will get to the lines. These are all from FanDuel as usual. Nothing sponsored, just I like to use their interface more than anybody.
They do have the easiest interface.
These are also chronological in terms of time. This is not in order of any preference. This is just in order of time. Friday, very, very interesting Pac-12 Friday night game. Washington on the road at UCLA, open 2.5. Currently, Washington minus 3.5. Matt, I mean, we'll go through these quickly. I don't really have any thoughts on this one. Seems a little bit weird.
Points. Yeah. The total's 66.5. Both these teams have scored 40 plus in all their games, except I think Washington scored 39 at home against Michigan State. Neither defense is terribly great, but both offenses like to throw the ball and are pretty efficient. I'm really looking forward to this one because I think these two teams are pretty similar, and I think the winner of this one is going to have a chance to challenge for that second spot in the Pac-12 title game. I think this is it for a Friday night game, for Friday night Pac-12 after dark game. I think this is a really, really fun, perfect matchup. And I'm glad it's on Friday, because if it was on Saturday, might not get to it. But the fact that it's Friday night, man, I'm going to have all eyes on this.
I love Washington. I love points in this game.
You could tell me the over was 80.5, and I'd still I'd still talk myself into taking it.
I'm probably going to play.
It'll be played in front of 200 people at the Rose Bowl, but still.
I'm just going to play the under despite you guys. I'm sure Washington fans will make the trek down. Michigan at Iowa on Saturday, the big noon Saturday game. So one other thing that I'll mention is a few of these. If you're new to gambling, you'll hear the term game of the year. And what that means is that There are sports books that put several games up during the summer. So you'll see some of the bigger games of the season during the summer. This was a game that was up during the summer. It opened at Michigan -4. The way things have gone this year, Michigan is currently a 10.5-point favorite on the road at Kinnick.
I was texting with Phil a little bit during the Michigan-Maryland game. I think Michigan wins this game, but I think Iowa's defense is going to play pretty darn well. They always play Michigan tough at home, and this is the first time this year Michigan's had to go on the road, and Iowa's not an easy place to go play on the road in a Big Ten conference environment. I don't think Iowa's offense is going to be able to do too much just because I think Michigan's defense is pretty good. They're not as good as last year, but they're still solid. And Iowa's offense has struggled all year, but I think Iowa's defense and special teams is going to give them a chance. Blake Corum's not running for 230 yards again. We don't know Donovan Edwards' status yet, and I know Harbaugh's playing coy with that. But even if you get him back, it's is he going to be rusty? Is he going to be fully healthy? I think Iowa's going to sell out to stop the run. And from what you saw from J.J. McCarthy, and really his first reels, I know he played some games, but that was a first home Big Ten start against not a great Maryland team, but a solid one. He looked a little shaky at times. He made a couple big throws at the end, but man, if you don't get that football off the face mask, Michigan's probably losing that game at half. And if Maryland doesn't give the ball away a couple times, that's a game Maryland's probably kicking themselves saying we should have won. We could have came away at least with an overtime or, had a chance to win it at the end. Was not highly impressed with Michigan's offense with that first tough test. And I think the defense is obviously only getting better going to Iowa. So I think the total's 42.5 still. I would lean towards an under there. And probably if you think it's going to go under 42.5, probably an Iowa plus 10.5. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of points in Michigan. Not really. I think Corum can run for much again.
Yeah, I don't like points in this game. And again, this is the second sort of tell the truth game against Michigan. And we talked about it last week. This was a tell the truth game against Michigan, and they looked like a pretty average team, just in general. I'm higher than most people on Maryland, but again, Michigan, I don't want to say get into the teeth of their schedule because their teeth is full of gaps. Their mouth is full of gaps, if that's a thing. It's a stupid analogy, but you know what I'm going with here. So I'm curious to see how their offense looks against an even better defense than they faced so far. Because again, their first 3 games I don't know if they could have done any different if they were playing 7-on-7 versus a high school team. It was just embarrassing.
The next game on the list, this one's really interesting to me.
Go Hawks.
Kentucky, Ole Miss. This opened at 4. Ole Miss, a 6.5-point favorite in this game. I think that there might not be a team we know less about right now than Ole Miss. So I don't remember
Kentucky too.
Kentucky at least played Florida. They went to Florida and they won.
Bad Florida.
So regardless, they won on the road and they won at the place where Utah won.
That's totally fair.
Sorry, my apologies to whoever tweeted this. I just took it and I forgot to credit them, but they put together kind of a composite ranking of 6 different analytical rankings. So SP plus, FPI, a bunch of other things, and did a composite ranking. Ole Miss is currently by that tied for 8th in the country, and a team that has played an FCS team. They played Tulsa. They played Georgia Tech, who put up no fight, and I can't remember who their other game was against. I think the highest ranked team they've played in SP Plus was 72nd in the country, which isn't to say they're bad, which isn't to say they're not good. I just have no earthly idea. I think they can run the ball very well, and we have no idea what they have in Jackson Dart or Luke Altmaier, and they're going to get a Kentucky team that, if nothing else, is going to come down there and be very well prepared.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I don't really know anything about Ole Miss. I feel like for as good of a quote unquote good of a team, good of a program they are, haven't really seen much of their games this year. I don't really know much about Jackson Dart. This is their first kind of prove it test. I agree, Alyssa. Iowa all day. I'll bet the Hawks.
Shout out to Alyssa in the chat.
Go Hawks. I'm excited to learn about Ole Miss. The 6.5-point line seems a little fishy, but this is right now for me at least a complete stay away just because we don't really know much about them. I could see Ole Miss blowing them out. I could see Kentucky keeping this a really low scoring back and forth game that they kind of win late 21-17, something like that. I have no idea what to expect from this one, but I'm excited to hopefully learn about Ole Miss.
I'm just excited to get some type of lane moment. That's all I want because I haven't watched. Have either of you watched 1 second of Ole Miss this year? Because I haven't watched 1 second of Ole Miss.
Highlights. That's
very,
it.
Very, very, very little of the Georgia Tech game, but other than that, no.
Excited to see what Ole Miss is because again, when they're good, when their offense is humming, they're fun. But I just have no clue. So,
That's where I am. Next game on the list, Oklahoma at TCU. This summer it was 3.5. Currently Oklahoma 6.5. I'll go ahead with a little spoiler alert. I'm going to have this one on my card. I think Oklahoma bounces back against the TCU team that is very unlikely going to be able to stop anything Oklahoma is going to want to do on offense. A big bounce back spot for the Sooners against a good but not great TCU team. Max Duggan's been very efficient for TCU, but this feels like a game that they're going to struggle to do enough to stay in it against the Oklahoma offense.
Seconded.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is I'm still high on Oklahoma. They lost a weird home game to a team that's their boogeyman. I think TCU is a fine middle of the road Big 12 team. I don't think anybody's bad in the Big 12 this year, so I don't think TCU is bad. But I think this is a bounce back spot for Oklahoma where they get right. I still think that team is really, really talented, and I think this is a good spot for the defense to kind of get back on track and figure things out.
Yeah, we're going to find out who the worst team in the Big 12 is on Saturday when Texas plays West Virginia. Moving on, the next game on the list, Purdue at Minnesota. Opened 7.5. Minnesota out to 11.5 as of 1:30 today. I don't know if it's still there, but big.
It's 12.5 even I saw.
Oh, is it 12.5?
I think I might have saw somewhere 12 now, 12.5, but still.
That's a huge number for a Minnesota team that at the very least we haven't seen. The only thing I will say is we haven't seen them play an offense that appears to have any level of capable offensive ability. I don't know if I like them at 11.5. Just my general instinct is I don't think being super one-dimensional against Minnesota is going to be a path to success for a Purdue team that really doesn't run the ball very well. If they're just so one-dimensional that Minnesota can just kind of pin their ears back, it might be a long day for them. But again, we talked about it earlier, still not quite sure what we know of Minnesota. We hoped we were going to get something. We were going to learn something about that team against Michigan State, and we might have just learned that Michigan State stinks.
Yeah, with you. I hope we might have learned something about Minnesota. We don't know that for sure. Obviously, this game hinges on whether or not Aiden O'Connell plays, and if he plays, if he's healthy. But yeah, Purdue's going to have to run the ball. Not that they ran the ball great against Penn State, but they did enough on the ground to kind of open things up a little bit for Aiden O'Connell. I think King Doru had like 70-something yards on 13, 14 carries. So not a great day, but certainly enough to make Penn State respect the run. I think they're going to have to do that with Minnesota. And if Purdue does get O'Connell healthy, they are able to run the football a little bit and put up a couple touchdowns early. Can Minnesota win in a track meet type of game with a team like Purdue when the quarterback and offense is firing on all cylinders? Not really sure yet, but this one definitely have an eye on, and I think this one's going to be a fun one if O'Connell plays.
Yeah, it seems like Brom's been very quiet about O'Connell's injury. So it said could be back next week, could be back in a few weeks, which means he's probably not playing. I
think the line suggests he's certainly not.
Yeah. So
Mike Snaggs in Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards Snaggs in Minnesota with the week backups being not Aiden O'Connell.
That's fair. Next on the list, Texas Tech at Kansas State. Two teams coming off of huge wins. Opened 7, Kansas State 7.5. No idea what to expect or to make of this game. Both teams are capable of playing at a high level. I would assume that if you're talking about potential letdown, maybe Texas Tech having to go on the road here where Kansas State gets to come home. I mean, that might be the only thing. But we're going to talk about this a lot this year. Like we just talked about it just a second ago. Like there are not going to be a lot of bad games in the Big 12.
No, the Big 12 every Big 12 matchup's going to be fun. I don't think there's a bad team in the Big 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost which team can. I don't think they're a terrible football team. I don't think they're a very good football team, but like their offense against a bad Virginia Tech team, but a solid Virginia Tech defense and well-coached defense just went in Tulane Stadium and beat the crap out of them. But this one, it's who can avoid the letdown. The 7 and a hook scares me a little bit. If I'm a Kansas State bettor, I'd probably lean towards Texas Tech as long as it's 7.5. But it's just who can avoid that letdown, and I'm not really sure who's going to avoid that letdown at this point. Again, I lean a little bit towards Texas Tech. They played the one game on the road this year and played NC State somewhat tough and ended up losing that game, I think, like 27-14. But I really don't know on this game. It's both teams are coming on into weird letdown spots.
Yeah.
Staying far, far away. Is Adrian Martinez? Is he going to be back to Adrian Martinez?
Probably, because he's not playing Oklahoma.
I know. I'm just staying very, very, very far away from this game.
Yeah,
but I'm allowed to watch it.
Going through, a lot of books have Minnesota 12.5. That 11.5 still is at FanDuel. So if you wanted to bet some Minnesota and have some money in a FanDuel account and a FanDuel state, you want to go to there, always we will remind you to price shop. Don't just take whatever lines I throw out here. That is just from one book to make our lives easier.
Yep.
Always shop your lines. An interesting Pac-12 game. Also, a league that at the very top at least has a bunch of really interesting teams. Oregon State on the road in Salt Lake City opened 11.5 down to Utah 10.5. Brant Keithy, their star or their best, probably their most reliable skill position player, the tight end, out for the year with a knee injury, unfortunately for Utah. So they're down a skill guy that they are counting on. Handled their business at Arizona State this past weekend. Oregon State coming off a bit of a tough loss against USC. And now, man, talk about that's a shit schedule. It's a shit draw there to have to play USC and then go to Utah.
I think I like Utah because this is a tough spot for Oregon State. You just lost a heartbreaker at home where you probably should have won. You had the turnover battle. You had everything going your way. And one drive late, one Bush push, and you lose the football game. Now you got to go to Utah, which is already a really, really tough place to play. You're coming off that emotional low. I feel just like it's a letdown spot for Oregon State. I like Oregon State. I think they're a pretty darn good football team. I still think before this season's over, they're going to have some big Pac-12 win that shakes something up. I just don't think it's this spot. I think this is a spot where Utah kind of takes care of business.
Yep. Seconded.
Oh, so
does Cam Rising still have the Buccaneer facial hair?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't watched them play. Man,
that's your job each week is to keep up with Cam Rising's facial hair.
It's killing me.
Every Tuesday.
It's killing me they lost that first game because I was looking at Cam Rising's stats, and his stats are really good. Like, he's thrown 2 interceptions, but I think he's got like 1,000 total yards, 10 touchdowns. I know passing. I don't know how many rushing touchdowns. It's like, man, if they had just been able to win that fucking game at Florida, they would he'd still potentially be able to get into the conversation for the Heisman if they beat USC. But what we feared was going to happen has happened. They've just been out of sight, out of mind. They lost that game, and nobody's been able to watch them since. The next one, Alabama on the road. We get to at least maybe get a test for the Alabama defense, maybe not their offense so much, as they go to Fayetteville to take on Arkansas this summer. It opened at -19. Somehow it only reopened at 14.5. So there's not a lot of faith, or there wasn't a lot of faith in the books in Alabama here. Out to 17. I was really hoping that maybe the crowd in Fayetteville can inspire that defense to step up and play well. But a team that doesn't tackle or cover well against an Alabama team that we've seen have some issues at skill position players still doesn't bode well. If they made the A&M offense look competent at times, I really struggle to think they're going to be able to get enough stops to really make this game competitive.
Yeah, I like Bama here.
Yeah, I like Bama. The spread, I'm hesitant. I'm kind of like the spread a little bit, just slightly. And
what'd you say it was 17.5 now?
It was 17. Let me do some. 17. You guys talking? I'll go do some.
So at 17, I don't hate that because I think Arkansas lost that game and they would have won, but like, this is even more of a Super Bowl for them at home versus Alabama. And so I think this is a game where it could be, close quickly. I don't see Alabama having the upper echelon of firepower to like completely blow the doors off of them. And I think KJ Jefferson will make some plays. Do I think they're going to come close to winning? No, but I think they could, lose by 16 points. Is Alabama going to play like they did against Texas, or is Arkansas going to put everything they possibly have into winning this game like Texas did? We'll see.
The line kind of stinks to me. I think I'm probably just going to lay off it because as Alabama is a much better football team, but Arkansas still has a guy in KJ Jefferson that is good enough to take over a football game. I think Alabama wins. I think they probably do it pretty easily, but yeah, I could see Arkansas backdoor covering late or something like that. So I think this is a no play for me. Not that Alabama's in a spot where they look ahead or have many look ahead spots, but they do have Texas A&M next week. And I think that's a game that they're going to want to win by 1,000,000 points. And I don't know if this is, I'm not going to touch this game. I don't like it. The 17 is too much for me to come here.
Yeah, there's 17.5 out there. There's 17. There's nothing south of that. Shout out to Damani in the chat. Best early show in the biz. We appreciate that. He is in the Deep Dive DGen Discord. Some good college football conversation. If you're into the NFL, I highly encourage you to join that because there's some really, really sharp folks in there. Go to the Deep Dive Pod Twitter account for the link there. Rematch of a fantastic Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma State on the road at Baylor. Opened 1, Baylor -2.5. I wanted to kind of do some digging on this game. Baylor got a big win, a game that I thought they pretty much dominated Iowa State on the road. Now they get Oklahoma State, a team we're going to find out a lot about because they've just been in a spot where their big non-conference game was against an Arizona State team that didn't really show us much of anything. So we'll get to learn a lot about where Oklahoma State is in another fascinating Big 12 game.
Yeah, we don't know much about Oklahoma State at all. I think we're finally getting towards the end of the who is this team type weeks and learning about these teams weeks. I think we know about Baylor. I think we know they're a very well-coached football team. Not sure the offense can keep up with Oklahoma State if it's firing on all cylinders, but I also trust Dave Aranda more than I trust Mike Gundy, especially in a home spot here. So I think I tend to lean towards Baylor, but don't really know enough about Oklahoma State yet.
I gotta jump early, guys, but I will see everybody on Thursday. I'm excited for this card. I looked at this card. I hated the card last week, but I like the card this week. I got some hot picks coming up.
Well, we appreciate it. Always, Phil. We'll see you on Thursday, or Matt will see you on Thursday. Hopefully, I will as well. All right, moving on. We have a few more games. He wished we had been able to get to this literal next one because it's his Knowles. Somehow this one interesting. Wake Forest opened -1.5. Now Florida State's almost a touchdown favorite.
I saw that. That's very weird. The weather thing wouldn't swing it that much?
No, I just think that maybe the books have more faith in Wake Forest than everyone else does. I'm just excited to watch it.
Yeah, we talked about this one already.
Can do.
I just really hope this one isn't I hope we don't have a monsoon that it's pouring and windy. I really hope we get like a true football game between these two, because I think we learned that Wake Forest has a pretty darn good offense. The defense not as great. I think we're going to learn a lot more about Florida State in this one. I'm excited to see this football game, and I hope it's not a mud bowl.
I think the storm will probably be mostly through Florida by the time we get to Saturday. Who knows how it's going to affect preparation and what kind of damage it's going to do and all of that. So that remains to be seen. Iowa State on the road at our Kansas Jayhawks, and the bookmakers have no more respect for our Jayhawks than the pollsters do. Iowa State a 3.5-point favorite. I might just bet Kansas to win this game outright.
I'd take Kansas on the money line.
Sportsbooks.
I'm going to take Kansas. I mean, you had that stat about Matt Campbell.
Yeah.
In what, 3.5 point spreads or less?
Either way, yeah. 3.5-point favorite to a 3.5-point dog. They lost, by the way, again, another one on Saturday against Baylor, and now they're a 3.5-point favorite at Kansas. Texas A&M on the road at Mississippi State. Open Mississippi State 1.5. Mississippi State currently a 3.5-point favorite. Mentioned the Anais Smith injury earlier. I don't know what to make of this. I think A&M's got a lot more talent, but I'm assuming that this is basically this means the books think they're fairly even at home, and you get the edge for home field advantage there. But man,
I think I lean towards if anything, a Mississippi State money line, and just kind of taking the juice there. I'm not sure. I think Mississippi State has a pretty solid offense, and I think they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit. If they put some points up, I don't think A&M can keep up. But again, probably a stay away from me on this one.
College game day is in Clemson, South Carolina for the NC State Clemson game. This summer, Clemson was a 13-point favorite. When it reopened this weekend, it was 7. Clemson is a 6.5-point favorite at home against NC State. There is no way you could pay me to back Clemson again. I will save most of my thoughts because we've been running super long on this one anyway. I'll save most of my thoughts for Thursday if I'm here on that game. But yeah, should be a good, interesting game.
Yeah, I don't have a lean there yet. Probably have something on Thursday once we look more into it, but never really know who you're going to get with Clemson. And NC State has been kind of up and down this year. This is obviously a huge test for them.
Yeah. The final one I just put on here because one of these teams, if they lose and they lose bad, their coach is going to get fired. But every time LSU and Auburn get together.
I thought you meant either coach is going to get fired.
No. If one of the team, if the home team in this game, Auburn, loses to LSU and LSU just kicks the shit out of Auburn, Brian Harson's going to get fired. Like I mean, it was that close. If
twice, he was that close twice.
If Eli Drinkwitz doesn't play for a fucking field goal with 3 timeouts and a minute left at the end of regulation,
I still get that because it was an extra point.
Just like, dude, just go score a touchdown.
And then in overtime too, Auburn had the like the 47-yard field goal attempt that the kicker missed by. It was the most college kick ever, missed by 20 yards. And then there was an offsides, I think, and they bumped him up 5 yards, split the uprights. And Missouri's running back just fumbles. inexplicably fumbles.
Yes, and that's another thing. That's another thing I'll give Joey McGuire credit for. Going back to my misery on Saturday, so Bijan Robinson fumbles, so in overtime, so Texas needs to kick the field goal. They drive the ball inside the 5. They could have kicked it at any point down there, and Joey McGuire tried to score the touchdown on 3rd down. Donovan Smith on a keeper, and he would have scored the touchdown and walked into the end zone, but he just slipped and fell down. They ended up kicking the field goal and winning anyway. Just like, be aggressive. It's not going to kill you. Nevertheless, this is a game that is a rivalry that has featured earthquakes. This is a rivalry that has.
You talked about A&M and Arkansas being a weird
behind the stadium.
You talk about A&M and Arkansas being weird. This is the weirdest rivalry in college football.
If you've never seen the video, go on YouTube and just search Auburn Barn Fire and watch what's going on as the old athletic facility caught on fire and was engulfed in flames next to the stadium in the 90s. I don't remember what year specifically. There was also a game in LSU where LSU scored late and the crowd was so loud it registered on a Richter scale at the LSU Seismology Center or whatever the fuck it's called. I don't know. So weird one. Auburn was a 1.5 point favorite over the summer. It opened over the summer. Reopened late Saturday night with LSU as a 3.5 point favorite, and everybody in the world thought that was a little bit shallow, so they ended up on LSU at 8.5 right now.
Oh God, it's already at 8.5. No, I'm not touching that. 3.5. I wish I got LSU at.
Yeah, I wish I'd kind of seen that.
8.5 is this? I'm sorry, is this at Auburn?
In Auburn. It's in Auburn.
Yeah, weirder things even happen in Auburn.
But
not touching it. Like Auburn stinks. They're a very bad football team, but this is a rivalry that just no matter what the teams are, this one never seems to get out of hand. It always seems to be close. Brian Kelly tends to play a lot of these games closer than he should. He usually ends up pulling them out, but he ends up in closer games than he should be. So this is an absolute no play for me.
Yeah, I mean it's wild, and this is going to be strange. This one won't make our list because I'm not even sure if LSU is ranked at this point. I guess they probably are. They're not. That's why it wasn't on my list earlier. So it probably won't end up on the list on Thursday. But shit, man, is this going to be a situation where you're dealing with a home crowd that is rooting for their team to lose?
No, because it's still the SEC and it's still this big of a rivalry. Now, if it got out of hand, maybe you'll get some sarcastic cheers when LSU pours it on. But
if this goes badly early,
then yes. But at the start of this game, you're still Auburn, they're still LSU. It's the Tiger Bowl. You still want to win this one. Brian Harsin's getting fired no matter what. It doesn't really matter if they do it now or at the end of the year or in 3 weeks. He's still getting fired no matter what. They still want to win that game. But this one's too weird for me to ever touch. I've learned my lesson betting this one in the past where I think one team should blow the other out, and then lo and behold, the underdog's winning by 10 in the third quarter.
It's it's college football game. Yeah. It's very much a because it's college football kind of game.
Not touching.
Absolutely. Man, it's a shame that neither team is that great this year because it is just the stupidest rivalry. That's all I got. You got anything else you want to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we have done it.
Texas on a bye this week?
Huh?
Texas on a bye this week?
I told you the game for the worst team.
Oh, yeah, West Virginia.
Let me just say this. As I've gotten older, man, I absolutely feel for anyone who is able to attend college football games in the central time zone and has to go to an 11 a.m. kickoff. I understand that attending that sucks. However, as I've gotten older, I want all of Texas's games to be on at noon just so that I can fucking get them over with. So, the game on Saturday is at 7:00 at night, and I have to sit around all day to wait for them to play like shit against West Virginia.
Yeah, those night games, especially the ones where your team's not all that great, they're always tough to wait for. I've been going to Notre Dame games my whole life, and 1:30 Central Time kickoff is just absolutely perfect. To wake up, you get to watch game day, you get out there, you do some tailgating, you have some fun watching the game, you're out of there by 4:30. You're home by 5:30 or so, just in time to catch the end of because the 1:30 kickoff time is obviously earlier than the SEC 2:30 game. Sometimes you catch the end when you get home, then you're home just in time for the night game. It's perfect. The whole night game thing. If you're going to it, it stinks because you don't get home till midnight. And if your team's not very good, you're waiting to see them either kill or play a bad football game and maybe eke out a win, and then you can't go to bed for an hour because you're too fired up.
So, Texas in Austin against West Virginia, another one of those weird games that has been strangely hostile since West Virginia came to the Big 12. They played some games early on in West Virginia's time in the Big 12, when Geno Smith was still there, that were very, very intense. Dana Holgorsen had some games against Texas that were very intense and very close. So strangely like kind of a fun rivalry that's going to be gone in a couple of years when Texas goes to the SEC. That's all I've got. I may not be here on Thursday. Hopefully I will. We're not sure, but Matt will definitely be here. Phil will be here. They will be back to give you the 5 big games of the week. They're under the radar games and give you their entire betting card for, can't believe we're already into October in the college football scale. Oh, one last thing. I will give you, just in case I'm not here on Thursday.
Well, you'll still give us your card.
I will still give you my card. Maybe we'll see. It depends. Depends on how busy I am on Thursday at the doctor's office. But under 39, San Diego State, Boise State on Friday night. That is on my card. I'm playing that. Boise State just fired their offensive coordinator, which caused their starting quarterback to enter the transfer portal, and they're the better offensive team in this game. That's all you need.
Brady Hoke's still at San Diego State?
Brady Hoke is still there. Andy Avalos is still at Boise State for now. Brady Hoke, Coach Hot Dog Water. Google college football meme tweets if you don't know what I'm talking about there. For Phil, for Matt, I'm Dan, and we will be back with you on Thursday.